And welcome back to the show. The Atheist Experience is live December 29th, 2002. 02 is over.
Just about.
It's over. Wow. So Happy New Year, everybody. Our show is sponsored by Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. I'm Martin Wagner, your host. As always, Ashley Perrien, my co-host. Thanks for tuning in. ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday morning, 10:30 a.m. at Hot Jumbo Bagels, located downtown, 307 West 5th Street, between Guadalupe and Lavaca, except for the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series in the Longhorn Room of First Cafeteria of North Cross Mall. That would be next Sunday then, being January the 5th. The first Sunday of January will be our next lecture series, and our speaker is Van Orden. What's his first name? Thomas Van Orden. I can never remember that. Who is the fellow, the homeless lawyer who has been battling the Ten Commandments monument on the Capitol grounds.
Yes.
And I'll be very interested to hear what he has to say, and I have some questions for him. Yeah. So that should be a very interesting talk. That'll be next Sunday morning at FERS. Let's see. Godless Gamers. Among our many other social activities ACA engages in, we have Godless Gamers, which takes place Monday nights at 7 o'clock p.m. at the home of Russell and Virginia Glasser. You can talk to either Russell or Ginny, get directions. That's all kinds of fun. And Atheist Happy Hour. Can't talk. ACA Happy Hour is our Thursday evening get-together. About 7:30, 8 o'clock-ish. People tend to trickle in all night long, and that takes place at Antonio's Tex-Mex near the intersection of I-35 and Highway 183. See, The Nonprofits is our weekly internet radio show hosted by Jeff D. and Russell Glasser, and that plays at the atheistnetwork.com website. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon every Saturday. It's an MP3 stream, so you can just stream it off your website, and there is a live chat room feature that you can use to interact with the program while it's going on, and that's always very entertaining. It's an hour and a half of news analysis and just a bunch of yelling back and forth, and it's all kinds of fun to listen to. So atheistnetwork.com. Be sure to listen to The Nonprofits every Saturday afternoon at 2. And, of course, we have on our website, on the radio page at the Atheist Community of Austin website, there are about the last 10 weeks' worth of episodes are downloadable and listenable if you miss some. Okay, the University Atheists and Agnostics. Here we go. This is a new, as of last semester, they just finished their first semester, and very successful it was. UT student organization, registered UT student organization, founded by our very own Charles Tabaney. And they will be starting their meetings next semester, will be in Rainey Hall, HRH, and that's room 3.102A. And it's still Friday, 4 o'clock p.m. There we are on the monitor there, 4 o'clock p.m. Fridays, which is the same meeting time, but now they're switched over to Rainey Hall. 3.102A is the new room, and Charles tells me it's a really nice big meeting room with. Yeah. So, for more information, if you are a UT student or faculty member on the group, it's uaa@mail.utexas.edu. And I guess I don't know the exact date that they'll have their first meeting of the spring semester, but I'm sure as soon as Charles knows, he will tell us. That has been a very successful atheist agnostic student group, the first one that I've really known about since I've been in Austin, and I've been here for a long time. We won't say how long, but when I was a student there, they didn't have. I know
they had some other group there. I know that Jeff was involved.
Something like the University Skeptics or something.
Yeah,
like
Skeptics Side or something like that.
But apparently that imploded. This has not. This has exploded. Had a tremendously successful first semester, and so they're going to be continuing it on. So congratulations to Charles on that. So let me see. I do believe that is all of our regular announcements. So without further ado, let me just check. Yep, that's it. If you want to find out more about our lovely group, you can visit our fine website at atheist-community.org, where there's more information on social events and big pictures of our smiling faces, and just, it's too much fun. So that's it. So thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Ashley, what is going on in the world today? Okay. Let's go over to the news and do some of that.
All right. Couple stories this week. A couple of these are actually updates on some older stories that we had. All right. This is one that we covered a little bit back in, I believe, the beginning of October. Okay. There was a guy who was being, he was going to go for the, Food and Drug Administration panel on women's health policy. He was proposed to go into
Bush
that.
appointee.
Yes, Dr. W. David Hager.
Oh, this guy.
Yeah. Right. From the University of Kentucky, obstetrician gynecologist. Well, he was appointed on the 11th among 11 physicians appointed. He was one of them.
Wow.
Now, the problem here, some of the Christian websites and people are pointing out is that he is anti-abortion. And so everybody's against him and railing against him because he's anti-abortion. And they're saying, well, now is this supposed to be some kind of litmus test for being on the Food and Drug Administration? Well, no, it's not. The problem we have is Hager and his wife Linda have recommended specific scripture readings and prayers for such ailments as headaches and premenstrual syndrome.
Yeah. What does that make him?
You can be pro-abortion or anti-abortion, pro-life. That's not a problem. When you start saying, I'm sorry, you have cramps, well, here, read David, 26 through 8. That doesn't work.
Well, what does that make him? It makes him a witch doctor. It makes him a witch doctor. I mean, isn't that what witch doctors do? Oh, you've got a gout. Here, dance this little dance and say
dance
these chants.
Thou around the fire 3 times.
Yeah, say these chants to appease the gods, and you'll get. That's what witch doctors do.
Yeah.
This man is a witch doctor.
Yeah.
That's what he is.
So yeah, I mean, he is against the abortion pill RU486. He's trying to get that reversed. Yeah. He is anti-abortion. He doesn't like condemned birth control pills,
this is
which
Bush.
is all fine.
Well, this is Bush.
I have no problem with that.
Insofar as abortion happens to be the law of the land right now. Okay.
Exactly.
And if so, but it's not just that he's anti-abortion.
Yeah.
It's that the anti-abortion sentiments, are motivated by religious extremism.
Yeah. There's no logic behind it.
Yeah, and this is not even that there's no logic behind it. It's that you could have a perfectly sound, medically based, logical argument against having abortions.
Exactly.
But he hasn't got that. What he has is religious fundamentalism motivating his views. Yeah. And this makes it a serious church-state issue. Yeah. And when you've got a guy recommending prayers
to get over your cramps,
to get over menstrual cramps,
and headaches,
instead of thanks,
thanks, but next,
that's not a person who is but he also has some other serious troubling things about him too, right? Which is that he denies birth control to unmarried women. He's done that in his practice.
Yeah.
Okay. No, so this is a guy who is clearly allowing his own, personal moral views to cloud his ability to, do what the Hippocratic Oath says doctors need to do and just treat patients. Yeah. Give them what they want. Yeah. And there's nothing illegal or, and there's not debate about birth control. Maybe that's the next thing the conservatives want to hit, right? But I can understand, a conservative having strong anti-abortion points of view because you tend to, that goes with the territory. But, to then try to turn the clock back even more and say, oh, well, now you shouldn't even have birth control.
Yeah, that's a very different...
If you're unmarried, which now hints that, if this guy had the power, would he make any sexual activity between unmarried people illegal? Would he criminalize that? Yeah. Sounds like he would. So we're looking at, this... Folks, this is the American Taliban now trying to gain hold, and Bush is handing it to them. And, people who value liberties and civil liberties and freedoms...
So let's not have any form of birth controls. Yeah. When these people do have kids or get pregnant, they can't have abortion pills. Yeah. When they actually have the children and grow up and we don't give them any kind of sexual education to stop more pregnancies. And then when they get sick, read the Bible to get over it. Mm-hmm. That is not a good plan.
Yeah. And then, but then what has happened? What happens when you have uneducated people who are also lower income, right, and who don't have good means of supporting themselves, and they don't have access to proper reproductive services, and then they have all these babies that they can't afford. Yeah. Well, what happens? And what happens? They go on welfare. Another big enemy of conservatives. Yeah. And not something that I'm a big fan of either, right? At least not the way it's set up, in our country. Yeah. But who pays for that? Yeah. So come on. I mean, at a certain point, we need to just kind of...
If you're not going to have birth control, at least have sex education. One or the other. Preferably both.
Well, you've got to have birth control. I mean, that's just comments. That's just,
you should have birth control, but you should also have sex education, which is another thing that they're against.
That's true too. Yeah.
So they don't want to teach anybody that sex can actually lead to kids.
Well, they do, which is why they want to, but they'd rather emphasize the sexually transmitted disease aspect of it, which is the big motivator behind their thrust for abstinence-only sex education.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, their worldview towards sex education is that it can be summed up in one sentence: "Don't do it until you're married." Yeah. The end. Next subject.
Which,
that's not education.
While a very good idea, I mean, it could be, but...
Well, I think it's a very good idea. I don't have any plans to get married, and I don't intend to remain celibate forever either.
Well, true, but abstinence only, I mean, you're never going to get pregnant if you don't have sex. You're going to have a really hard time getting sexually transmitted disease if you don't have sex.
If you...
So, I mean, in that idea, it's a valid idea. However, it's unrealistic. It is simply not going to fly today to tell teens, well, sorry, don't have sex. We're done with our sex education.
Teens,
turn to page 53 for something else.
Teens, right. But I mean, the women that this man was, the unmarried women that this man was denying birth control services to, presumably were legal adults.
Yes.
I can understand, maybe like denying the pill to a 14-year-old girl, especially if she, because that's like, well, you're doing something, your parents ought to know if you're sexually active. I think parents have that right.
Yes.
Of course. But, a 24-year-old woman, shut up and give me the pill, idiot. No, well, if you get pregnant, just say these prayers and go. Just next. So, the American Taliban is coming, people.
So that loon is now on our...
We've got at least one now.
FDA's Advisory Committee for Reproductive Health Drugs.
So we got to keep an eye on him.
Yeah. Okay. Now, more looniness.
Bye-bye, America.
Why not? Well, then we'll leave America for a bit. And
I want to save my country from these Taliban extremists.
Yes.
I think it's worth saving.
Yes.
And I'm an American too, and
And all I was alluding to was our next story. I'm not trying to,
If it really gets fascistic over here, maybe we won't have any choice. But I'd like to think we're not on that slippery a slope. Yeah. I don't want to slide into, being,
some quagmire. Religion.
We've heard enough from paranoid conspiracy theorists over the phone. I don't want to turn into one. So.
Okay. All right. I believe this next story, I can't find it written, but I believe it's in Africa.
Okay.
Now we've had stories before. I think in India they had the monkey devil or something like that. It was going around and killing people and stuff like
mass hysteria thing. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
A couple of these weird things that were going around.
That was a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
I don't believe it was that.
Wasn't it like 2000?
I don't know. I don't think it was that long ago, but it was a while back.
Yeah.
But anyway, the new one now is this is in Malawi's government.
Okay, Malawi is
I believe in Africa.
Yeah.
There is a new paranoia that vampires are going around. And this rumor, they're saying it might have been spread by the government's opposition or something like that. And so what people are actually going around doing is beating up and killing people who are suspected vampires.
Wow.
Now, what's really strange about this one, if that didn't cut it, was that the rumor that's going around is that Malawi's government is colluding with vampires to collect human blood for international aid agencies in exchange for food. Somehow, vampires are collecting blood, and I don't know how they get it out of them again, but I'm perfectly serious.
Yeah.
They're collecting blood, sending it overseas as aid, getting food in return for it to give to their people, which they now have less of. They have stoned to death 3 Roman. No.
What are the vampires getting out of the deal?
Yeah,
I mean, they go. I guess to these blood banks, right? I guess they. What do? They like barf up the blood that they've just drunk from their victim, and
imagery I don't need.
and then the state sells this food, which is mixed with vampire bile, this blood mixed with vampire bile, overseas in exchange for food.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like
to feed the people.
Yeah, sorry, you can't actually transfuse this blood in anyone because it's been in a vampire's stomach, so it's full of vampire digestive enzymes. And if you actually put it into someone, they're going to turn into a vampire.
Turn into a vampire, yeah.
But I still want to know what the vampires get out of the deal. Do they get better blood? Because that's all they eat, right? So they're giving up their only sustenance.
I don't know.
So this just goes to show how stupid superstition makes people.
Exactly.
They just don't think this stuff through. I mean, 2 seconds of rational thought, flushes that down the toilet.
Yeah.
But these people can't even engage in that.
Yeah.
I guess because the word government, right, is just this thing that makes some people go,
we like the big government conspiracies.
Evil,
they're
bad,
fun.
So.
But yeah, last week a man was accused of helping vampires was stoned to death, and 3 Roman Catholic priests, I kind of like that, were beaten up by villagers who suspected them of being bloodsuckers.
Well, I don't like to hear that anyone's been beaten dead.
Well, no, but
it's
funny that it's Roman Catholic priests, though.
Why were they
Catholic priests?
Oh,
are vampires.
Because priests are vampire hunters. Is that why they're?
No, priests are vampires according to this.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. I see.
They thought
the priests
were
are
vampires.
When traditionally, the priest should be the vampire hunters.
Exactly.
Well, these must obviously not be vampires from the Christian tradition. There's just some weird Malawi vampires that
some foreign
crosses in holy water don't do anything to. So, boy.
Yeah, that's true. So yes, they got
kookiness. It's all over the globe. Yeah,
not at all.
So, what is a Malawi? What are they trying to do about this lunacy in Malawi?
They're trying to counter that as best they can and say that look, this is complete rubbish.
Yeah. But in the meantime, are they like? Because you figure, right, when there's this kind of insane hysteria going on, the minute they arrest any of the people who were stoning the supposed vampires to death, we'll call them the stoners here on out. If they're arresting the stoners, then that's just, how the paranoid conspiracy mindset works.
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to say, that proves it. That proves that they're in league with vampires and because they're arresting all of our noble patriotic citizens who are, trying to fight this scourge in our lands. So.
Maluzzi told a news conference on Sunday that vampire stories were malicious and irresponsible. No government can go about sucking blood of its own people, he said. That's thuggery. Now, I like how they don't bother to point out that vampires aren't real.
Yeah.
They're made up. They're fiction. They don't point that out. They just said, the government can't be sucking the blood of its own people.
Yeah.
Well, true, but for different reasons.
Yeah. And besides, you're all idiots. They could have added that little rider at the end, but
you're all morons.
You're a bunch of
strangeness overseas.
I despair for humanity some days.
Yeah.
Give me a reason to not despair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, well.
I'm sorry. Wish I had one. Okay, follow up on another story from last week. We had the Raelians last week who had said that they had cloned someone. They were hoping to have their baby Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Well, it was actually born, according to them, the day after Christmas on Thursday.
Yeah. And according to them, that's an important part of the point, right?
Christmas or the day after?
No, the fact that the baby was born, according to them. Oh. We only have their word for it, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
They have offered no immediate proof of their claim or photographs of the baby. They say it's healthy. It's named Eve. And so apparently that we now have a clone in a crib somewhere on Earth. That is what's being said by the group Clonaid, which is the company supported by the Raelians.
Yeah, and I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah. Says the baby will go home in 3 days, and an independent expert will take DNA samples from the baby to prove she has been cloned. The results are expected within a week after the testing. So that's what they're saying.
Right. Okay. And what else have
but they have offered, as you said, no proof, no evidence.
Yeah.
So
now here's the thing, right? I'm a proponent of cloning in many ways, right? I think I don't necessarily know that I think reproductive cloning ought to be pursued.
Therapeutic cloning and testing in animals right now, I would definitely support. Going too far with human cloning as what they're essentially doing here. This is the first step in their plan. The Raelians' plan is actually, right now they're cloning humans into babies.
They say.
Yes. What they said they want to do was clone adults, which I don't know how you get to an adult without going through the baby first, but Anyway, they want to get adults, and their ultimate goal is to live forever. Mm-hmm. So instead of, therapeutic cloning, which grows you a new liver, so that when yours, craps out, you put in a new liver, and there you go. Yeah. They want to build you a new body and transfer your brain into the new body.
Now, here's the thing, though.
Continue on.
Now, I know that sounds like sci-fi, but that's not it's a great many scientific
theoretically possible.
Yeah, a great many scientific advances that we enjoy today came from sci-fi, so that's not a problem. Yeah. It's theoretically possible, and it's also not an idea that I have a problem with from an ethical sense, right? Because I think it would be amazing, and it would be, and of course, hopefully, the sooner the better, right? I think if you had a situation where people, of course, who chose to. If the technology existed to where when you got to be about 70 years old, you could, let's say when you turn 50, right, or we say you turn 40, take a DNA sample, right, and you can essentially grow yourself a new body. That's you.
Yeah.
Okay. So that, by the time 20 more years have passed, when you're 60, now there's a 20-year-old body that's blank.
Get yourself into
waiting for you to be installed into it. And this is a way that you can just, every 40 years or so, you can just, get a new body.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a terrific idea.
Yeah.
And it would be an effective way to essentially, drastically extend, if not grant immortality, but drastically extend human life expectancy.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with that in theory. I just wish that it wasn't these damn Raelians out there promoting the concept, right? I mean, because it's just, come on. Why did it have to be the kooky UFO cultists
of all the people
who are out there first, bringing cloning, the very concept of cloning, to the forefront of the minds of the public, and just making cloning seem like this fringe lunatic idea.
Yeah.
When I think that there are valid scientific applications for cloning.
Yes.
This is why cloning research needs to continue, so that we can determine what it is the valid applications of cloning would be as opposed to otherwise.
Yeah.
But when you have lunatics like this, right, getting involved in it, then, of course, what you have now coming from the Christian community and conservatives in the mainstream is you get the exact extremist point of view, where the first thing that the Christian conservatives are going to do is they're going to use fear tactics and play upon, the imaginations of the public by conjuring up images of, Osama bin Laden in his little cloning lab, just running off terrorists like a high capacity Xerox machine, which is not how cloning works, right? Yeah. But again, the fear rhetoric is outpacing, as usual, what the actual education in terms of what cloning really is and what it's really all about, and the good that it can really do. Because again, therapeutic cloning, as well as stem cell research, I think is vital. I think the human race needs that. I think that it would be criminal not to allow for that to continue. If you have the ability, again, to, because I've known guys who have had to have kidney transplants and liver transplants.
Yeah.
And you wait forever, and it's this daily dice with death, right? You're afraid you're not going to make it.
And then once you do get it, you have to go on this, horrendous treatment of drugs.
And there's always the risk that your body will reject the organ, and so you have to take all of these punishing drugs.
Exactly.
Wouldn't it be great if you could just have, through stem cells and through cloning with DNA, grow yourself a new liver. Your body can't possibly reject it because it's your DNA. And there could be these organ banks that are it's all yours.
Yeah.
I think that, that the benefits of that, I don't see why anyone would have any kind of an ethical problem with that. But except, of course, for religious extremists. And there was I read a quote from some Baptist minister, some leader of some Baptist group. And he was all puffed up and indignant, right? Because he's like, this is a full frontal assault on mortality. Like that's a bad thing. It's like aspirin is a full frontal assault on mortality, right? Yeah. I mean, that's a bad thing. He's like, this isn't part of God's plan. So it's like, and
polio was.
Yeah. In any sort of medical treatment, cancer research is a full frontal assault on mortality. You want to stop that?
Yeah.
But again, but then you have to realize that the religious community, it makes sense that they would take that point of view because religion thrives on that. If people no longer have death to fear, then religion loses it loses a big selling point. Maybe it's not gone, but it loses a big selling point. This whole, if people no longer have hell to be afraid of and some nasty afterlife. So, I would love to see advances made in cloning. I would like to see cloning made less of a boogeyman so the public understands, yes, just because there's some scientific advance that's going to be made, we don't always have to end up in this worst case scenario. Yeah. Again, that's another thing that religion has been very good about doing, is instilling this idea in people's minds that if there's some new scientific application, some new scientific discovery, and it can have an evil application, then
all it will ever be used
for. That's all it will ever be used for.
Yeah.
And no, I mean, scientists, certainly understand. Real scientists, not these cloned people who are say, we've got a clone baby, but we aren't going to show you, Real scientists understand these ethical matters, and that's why research takes such a long time in many ways.
Yeah.
So
cloning is definitely going on.
And I'll have more to say about the UFO believers here in a minute, right? Because that was last. If you didn't see last week's show, because the holiday came up,
you missed a good one.
You missed. Yeah, it was a humdinger. I mean, the UFO believers came out of the woodwork last week, and I have a few more things to say about that before we get into today's show. But do continue, my friend.
All right. There is a local guy in town. He actually teaches at UT, I believe, Marvin Alasky.
Right.
He is a fundamentalist Christian wacko.
How do you? We don't sugarcoat anything on the Atheist Experience.
Tell it like it is. He wrote Editorial about Christmas. They came out Christmas Eve, the day before. Saying, if you could invite anyone to dinner, who would you do? And there's only one person you could invite that would really change the lives of everybody there, and obviously implying Jesus. Basically, the rest of the article goes on about how if you don't believe in Christ, then your life is meaningless and empty and worthless. And he told the story about apparently a friend of his, Baines, told Grootman, told somebody else, there is no reason to live anyway. I had no interest in creating something, not in a product in business or a partnership with a person, and now I have no equity, no dividends coming in, nothing to show in my portfolio. Baines apparently died feeling he had lived a wasted life. That sucks.
For him, yeah.
But that's hardly the view of everybody who's not a Christian.
Yeah, but of course, the implication is that it is, right?
Exactly.
And there's just this incredible arrogance of the belief system.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, live on. Yes, Steve, we'll get to that. Thank you.
Just this implication that if you're not a Christian, then your life is empty and void, and we're not actually doing it.
I hear that. I hear that quite a lot, right? I mean, Christians who've tried to witness to me and convert me, right? They'll ask you that outright, or they won't even ask you. They'll tell you. Those points, they'll say, "You feel a void in your life right now, don't you?" And I'm like,
"No, not really."
Okay, well, the fact that I'm not a billionaire and dating 12 supermodels at once, and I'm not Hugh Hefner, I can see certain ways in which my life might improve, but in terms of voids, that your belief system needs to fill, no, I don't think so. Ain't gonna happen. Or at least not via that argument, so. But there's this assumption, right? Remember Hell House?
Yes.
And I'm trying to think of what was motivating some of these displays, right? I remember the whole dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
The where you have dad is nothing. Dad's just this
a drunk, loud on the couch watching TV.
And then wife comes home, and then they have a screaming match, and then there's another, and then a screaming match with the kid. Yeah. And then kid is all anguished and desperate.
Goes into the next room, watches a rock and roll video.
Yes.
And slits her wrist.
And cuts her wrist, right? And I'm like, whose family is this? I'm wondering, okay, so I say there aren't dysfunctional families, right? Yeah. Okay, I'm not saying they weren't.
Every family is dysfunctional.
I mean, to a certain degree, right? I mean, every family has fights and arguments, but I mean, but of course, they're trying to depict something that they think is the norm outside of their realm of living. Yeah. So the implication clearly was, if you're not a Christian, this is your family. And I'm like, nuh-uh, that ain't my, I think I know what my life is like.
Pretty far cry from my family.
It's not my family. It's not the family of any other people I know. And I know for a fact that there are Christian families that have just that, turmoil that's just as bad as any other family.
Yeah.
So again, this whole point of view, the whole argument fails But there's just this arrogance there that I'm better than you because I at least have Christ.
Yeah.
And so that's Alaski's arrogance. And we've had tastes of this kind of arrogance from Alasky.
Yeah, every now and then.
I mean, he's the guy who came up with this whole compassionate conservatism concept.
Yeah.
But he still is perfectly happy every once in a while to write some drivel and get newspapers like The Statesman to actually publish it, where he says, yes, I'm a compassionate conservative, but I'm still better than you because I'm Christian. Yeah, well, screw you, dude. I mean...
Yeah, and I do like his other thing here about Christians, though, practice caritas, which I don't know. That could be some kind of Spanish word.
Sounds like
don't know what it is. Which is apparently... help to the economically poor without expectation of anything in return.
Bull. That's a load of crap.
That is such hogwash.
Yeah. I mean, I know how a lot of these, for example, faith-based charities work.
Yeah.
Like these Christian homeless shelters.
Yeah.
They make these guys sit through 2-3 hour services before feeding them.
Yeah.
So don't say that there's no expectation of anything in return.
Yeah, they are expecting to get converts.
Yeah.
They are expecting the ultimate, get their heavenly reward and stuff like that. They're not doing this for nothing.
Yeah.
My foot.
Yeah.
They are doing it to try and get into, God's good graces.
Yeah, religion does everything it does.
Exactly.
For the purpose of swelling its ranks. For the purpose of converting new members.
Yeah.
That's everything that religion does is geared towards that end.
Yeah. So. Yeah. They are not doing it without the expectation of anything in return. Right. That is just an out-and-out lie. Or just not seeing what is sitting in front of your face.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, and this is also funny too. He spends all this time saying that, you should turn to Christ and you should be good and then your life will be fulfilled and all this kind of bull. Last sentence. For Christ doesn't even have to wait for an invitation. Whenever he chooses, he crashes the party.
So
he hasn't crashed any of ours yet.
Well, but wait a minute. He says you have to give your life to Christ, but then he'll crash the party anyway if he feels like it.
Exactly.
Then why do anything?
Exactly. Why change anything?
Why have Christianity? Okay. Yeah. Why have these? Why have churches? Why have any of these conversion efforts? Yeah. Just let Christ turn up and crash the party whenever he feels like
Apparently,
it.
if he wants me, he'll contact me.
Yeah.
He'll be in touch.
So fine. Here's my phone.
Yeah. He can find out the number.
It's.
So
it's just
he's nuts.
Yeah. Well, he's not nuts, right? He's an intelligent man.
Yeah,
but arrogant.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He's an arrogant. This is a textbook example of theistic arrogance in action right here. I'm better than you because I have these belief systems that you don't have, but you can be as good as me if you have my belief systems, and your life can be as good as mine.
Yeah.
Look at me. I am the model for a perfect life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm Christian, so that makes me perfect.
Okay.
So that's just... Not every Christian takes that point of view.
Of course.
But this is what you see publicly, right?
Yeah.
I mean...
They're the ones who get in the news.
Yeah.
So the ones who have the big beliefs and the ones who are vocal about it. And
again,
they're the ones who get the news.
Marvin Alasky, one of these, American Taliban guys, one of these religious right people who has the ear of the Bush administration.
Yeah. So, why don't we go on about your thing?
Oh, well, I
got one other story, but it can probably wait. If we get a lull, I'll go over that one.
Okay. Well, I was just going to mention that we had, our calls last week, our shows last week, were had to do with, and we are live today, by the way. The phone number to call us live is 477-2288. There are reruns of this show that play every Tuesday afternoon, same time, 4:30 p.m. on this channel. But today is the live show. 477-2288 is the live number to call us. We tackle all kinds of kooky belief systems on this program. But last week, and I think it was motivated by the Raelians show, the UFO nuts came out of the woodwork, and we had one guy in particular. And
really
this is
went
just
off the deep end.
This is just an example of how when you cannot distinguish fantasy from reality, this is why education and critical thinking is so important. Yeah. Okay. We heard from one caller last week was a guy who just for whom the line between fantasy and reality.
It wasn't grayed.
Yeah.
It wasn't there.
It was wiped out.
It was smudged out.
It was erased. Yeah. He called up and he first I thought he was just a standard, garden variety creationist because he he mentioned something about an alleged 50,000-year gap in evolution.
Brain supposedly grew at such an accelerated rate
that science hasn't accounted for, he says. But at the end of it, suddenly we were smart, right? We weren't we were monkeys, and then suddenly there's a 50,000-year gap, and then suddenly we're Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
And this has not been. And I haven't seen anything in any. Granted, I'm not a biologist, and I haven't read all the literature, but I've just the resources that I haven't seen anything referring to a specific there's a 50,000-year hole. Okay, but anyway, so we tried to get him to. Try to worm his point out of him. And by the time we were well into the call, his attempt to sort of explain this, because I thought we'd just gotten a standard creationist, but then we were moving into.
But he said several times that he's not a creationist.
Yeah, and so I was trying to ascertain. We were trying to ascertain where he's coming from. Yeah. And by the time the call was over, he had touched on Atlantis, Lemuria. Aliens
the ones who propagated the Earth.
Propagating on Earth, and they came here because there was a war on their planet. So in order to explain
there were several species of aliens.
Yeah. So he had this elaborately constructed fantasy that he was using, which was far more elaborate than the original question, right? He had this question about some perceived gap in evolution, and in order to answer it, he had come up with, I guess through reading various pseudoscientific literature, this whole elaborate, Star Trek scenario. And it just goes to show, the more complex it got, the more ridiculous it got. But this is why critical thinking is so important, because I just don't understand how somebody who is that lost in a fantasy life, to an elaborate fantasy life, can function.
Yeah.
Really, just day to day. Because
day to day,
when you think about just some of the basic things he was saying, some of the points he was making, if you think about them for 5 minutes, you realize that's not really how that would work. So somebody who is that embroiled in fantasy, clearly they don't have a comprehension of how reality works. For example, this whole, he tried to claim, as I've heard some people do, that there are ruins of Atlantis in the Azores.
Yeah.
Okay, but they're being suppressed. Okay, they have to be suppressed because it would threaten the power...
By the Illuminati.
Yeah, but it would threaten the power of the church, I think he said.
Yeah.
Okay, well, first off, think about this. For one thing, the Vatican doesn't rule the world anymore. Okay, they did in, the 1400s, about 1500s, but that's long ago. Okay, so who in the scientific community would care, right? I mean, an archaeologist discovers this vast ancient ruin. What's he going to do? Hello, I discovered a vast ancient ruin.
Yeah.
And I'm on the cover of front page of every newspaper on the planet.
Yeah, I have discovered Atlantis.
Yeah.
You're going to get in the papers.
No, that, and if it's in the Azores, right? What does the government of the Azores are a vacation resort, okay? What would the government of the Azores, care about? The Vatican says, ooh, you have to suppress this because that threatens us. Like, bite me, guys. I mean, the Azores, how many billions of dollars per year would their tourist revenues increase?
They said, come to Atlantis.
Yeah. Atlantis really existed. We have proof. We have the ruins. Come visit the Azores. Yeah. Call your travel agent. I mean, just think of the economic implications of these claims for 2 seconds, and you see how preposterous and absurd they are. But the problem is that this whole fondness with supernaturalism and superstition and mythology, and rather than get an education, just come up with these wacky ideas to explain how reality works, and that's okay. This has permeated our culture.
Yeah.
All of these, and it's not just religious memes, but it has spread out into, I think, just other, this is why pseudoscience, being more attractive to many people than actually learning what real science says, because pseudoscience is there to flatter some preconceived notion about something.
Yeah.
Like, specifically that there are higher powers watching over us. I mean, if you listen to the UFO believers, right, you're essentially getting the same concepts that Christianity offers, aren't you? I mean, there's this higher power, these advanced beings watching us. They created us, and they're going to take care of us someday.
Yeah.
And, they'll be back. They landed in their spaceships long ago, and they're gone. But they'll be back, just like Jesus is coming back.
They'll come one day and solve all the problems and take us up in their spaceship. And,
and I think now we're seeing that these kinds of beliefs are just as kooky and dangerous as religion has been in the past, because people have died for mainstream religions. Yeah. And now if you have, remember the Heaven's Gate cult?
Yeah.
That suicide cult, they all, drank that poison tang because they thought they were going to be beamed onto a spaceship.
Yeah.
Lunacy. So these beliefs are demonstrably dangerous and harmful.
Yeah.
And it really, really is dismaying to see people just being embracing them as thoroughly as this guy was. So
I mean, it goes back to what you say about, reality versus fantasy. I mean, what he said would be great material for a movie.
Yeah.
but it's just realizing that, it's great material for a movie or a book and not reality. Big difference there.
So, but, people just don't think critically.
Yeah.
But they think critically because they simply reject everything that's mainstream.
Exactly.
They think, well,
they're trailblazers.
Yeah. Establishment stuff, is the very act of just resisting what the established scientific fields say. That makes you a brave resistor. That makes you somebody who is a forward thinker. You're at the vanguard of And remember, they laughed at Einstein and they laughed at
Galileo and everybody else.
Well, no, maybe they didn't laugh at them. I don't know, but still, they laughed at Jerry Lewis too. So anyway, there is just far too much lunacy permeating our culture, and it's dangerous and it's bad for people.
Yeah.
And, this is why education is so important, science education. But anyway, but just let our callers know. Also, if you have questions, for us, there's our number to call us live. We'll try to answer you on, pretty much whatever your questions are. But one hot button topic among many of our callers is creationism versus evolution. So we just want to go ahead and, before the calls come in, just let you know, this is not a science show. We're not biologists. We're atheists. And if you have questions on that particular topic, there are better resources that you can go to. And one of those resources on the web is talkorigins.org. So if you have questions pertaining to evolution, you can look them up for yourself. They'd actually those resources would be better for you than us, right? I mean, we can give you basic layman's understandings of what the science says, but you can find that information for yourself. And in fact, I think we have there it is right there. I mean, talkorigins.org. If you have questions about evolution, why don't you check that out first before asking us? Because I'll admit to you right now, we're not biologists, we're not zoologists, we're not paleontologists, we're not archaeologists, we're not experts in that field, so we aren't really the best sources. If you have a question about evolution, ask a biologist. They'll know. So, but any other questions, just.
And for most basic questions, we also have the FAQ on the website.
Oh, right.
Which has lots and lots and lots of answers to the very basic questions, like,
Good point.
Where does all the good, where does pizza come from?
We have that one up there?
All the good stuff in the world, all the warm fuzzies, where do they come from? How can you be good without God? And so on and so on and so on. All those are all answered in the FAQ.
Yeah, the standard questions we get from,
are answered quite well, too.
And that's the fact it can be ever expanding, too. I mean, we've gotten some, the most common questions that we do get from callers are there. There's talkorigins.org. Go check that out if you actually have evolution questions. But for other questions pertaining to religion or, why disbelief versus, as opposed to belief and what have you, call us up, 477-2288. And I believe Melissa is our first caller on line 1, so I'm going to talk to her. Hey, you're on the air.
Hi.
How you doing?
Pretty good.
Good. What can we do for you?
I guess I don't really have a question. It's more of a comment.
Right.
I've always, grew up Catholic, always had a strong belief in God, and a couple of years ago I went back to school and had to take those biology classes, and suddenly, I really started questioning the whole religion idea, and still going through it. It's a kind of a painful process when you come to the realization that, or even start to question your faith.
There's some cracks in the walls.
I remember the first time I saw your show, I couldn't stand to listen to y'all talk, not even for 30 seconds. I'd be like, my curiosity would let me watch for about 30 seconds, and I'm like, nope, I can't do it. And then about, I guess a couple months ago, I can't get enough now. I'm like,
wow.
Good to hear.
Well, thank you. Oh, my goodness. It can be a painful process to go through that whole faith questioning thing, simply because religion is something that it excels at nothing if not getting its followers to invest 100% of their sense of personal self-worth in the belief.
Right.
I mean, belief becomes an end in itself. Faith is the ultimate virtue, and if you don't have it, then you're told that you're a bad person, you're a sinful person, there's something wrong with you, and you have to be corrected. And many people who have since become agnostics or atheists or unbelievers have told basically the same story, that it is a very, very difficult process simply because the first thing religion does in terms of when it hooks you in is it makes you think that there's something wrong with anyone who doesn't have this belief system. If you don't have this belief system, there's something wrong with you. Right. And realizing that no, it's okay to ask questions and it's okay to challenge things and to use your reasoning faculties. That's a good thing. Mm-hmm. I think that one thing that has really in the subsequent years has become a real sticking point with me, and some reason that I have a lot, and I'll admit I have a lot of animosity towards religion, mainly because it takes the very idea of reason, which is something that is particular to human beings, and I think that it is one of our great strengths. It's one of the things that makes us as a species stand out. Mm. It takes that and it turns it into a liability. It becomes sinful to use your reasoning powers to question, these beliefs that are handed to you and authoritarian ideas that are handed to you by these authority figures. Whether it's government or religious or what have you. The very act of questioning that becomes sinful, and the greatest strength that human beings, our minds have, becomes the greatest sin, and just simple capitulation, belief, faith, unquestioning obedience, that becomes the ultimate virtue. And I think that's perverse. I'm sorry.
It's also what baffles me is just how any educated person could believe in God. I guess that's. Yeah. I just keep telling myself, well, there's professors and highly educated people that still practice religion and believe in religion. So
it came up on the email list. Somebody was saying that occasionally they go into some of the Christian news groups and stuff like that, news groups and email lists, stuff like that, and they see atheists on there occasionally, and the atheists have this anger and hatred and this hard way of debating, I guess. And what's funny about that is I don't get on this list all that often, but when I have occasionally and, debated with other Christians, stuff like that, it's hard sometimes to put a tone on it to where you're just debating the facts. Because the analogy I made was, imagine if you're arguing with somebody who actually thinks the mall Santas are real and actually deliver presents.
Yeah, a grown man who actually believes that Santa Claus.
Exactly, a grown, 35-year-old guy who actually believes that Santa at the mall is real. It's hard to sit down with them and really, respectfully debate and say, well, that's a good belief that you have, and, we could argue it this way and that without going, you're nuts. That's all there is to it. You're gone.
But the more, I find a lot of, you do... the stereotype of atheists that religious people have, of course, is that of the angry, just pissed off at the world and what have you. But at the same time, though, it's not inaccurate to say that probably a lot of atheists, but it's particularly atheists who were raised Christian or who were raised in some religious household.
Exactly.
Those atheists do tend to have a good deal of resentment because you realize after many, many years of this upbringing what it is that you are being sold. Right. And there is a resentment of that. There is this whole resentment when you realize that you've spent your whole life being taught that if I don't adhere to this belief system, I'm an evil person who deserves an eternity of torture in hell. Yeah. And I have a particular resentment in that, for example, my parents are still, whom I love and I get along with great, but they're still very deeply religious. Have been all their lives. I don't think that'll ever go away. But although it's hard for me to kind of come out with my atheism to my parents, but I know that they suspect that they suspect in their heart of hearts I'm not religion. But the thing is, I don't bring up the topic to my parents, particularly to my mother, because she really believes that if I don't believe in God, I'm going to go to hell, and this causes her a great deal of anguish and emotional turmoil. And it pisses me off that religion has installed that in her. She has had a lot of unnecessary woe and strife and sadness introduced into her life that she doesn't need. Right. Religion has made her think that her son is going to be tortured forever. And I'm very resentful of that idea has been installed in her head. And I don't think any son wouldn't be resentful.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school for 12 years, and as an adult, I kind of laid off at going to church, but I still had a strong faith in God. Yeah. And I guess what I always thought about was I had some pretty nasty nuns, And
apparently we have a whole lot of pretty nasty priests too.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just thinking, is this the love that that God has intended when you smacking me on the legs with that ruler? I mean. So.
There was a thing recently that was brought up on our mailing list, and I'm not going to give the website out or anything like this because I'm appalled by it. But there's a guy who's got a website in which he's a woodworker, and he is making wooden paddles that he is selling to people for the purpose of spanking your child with. Yeah. Big wooden paddles.
Yeah, these aren't like, glorified wooden spoons, something like that. They're about yay big.
Yeah, they're like you see in frats, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But these are being manufactured with the purpose of that you hit kids with these.
Yeah.
But then he says, in what has got to be one of the most weird, perverse twistings of thinking that I've ever seen, it's like, but always do it with love, never in anger. So it's like, look, if someone hits you with a big piece of wood and then tells you they love you, run from that person. Okay? I don't see how physical violence is ever used in anything but anger.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I got the occasional pop on the rear end, my parents never wielded a weapon, this big, and that's what it is. A big wooden paddle. It's a weapon.
Yeah.
But there were all these Christians posting to his message board like, "Oh, God bless you for coming up with this wonderful, loving divine." It's like, what are you people nuts?
I know.
It's a cricket bat.
Yeah.
Very broad, I bet.
Yeah. And one woman responded to me, because I left some really harsh criticisms on his message board. Mm. And one woman responded to me and says, well, if you read your Bible carefully, it states spare the rod and spoil the child. And I said, ma'am, if you read your Bible carefully, it says that women who aren't virgins on their wedding night should be stoned to death.
Right.
So maybe this man's next big product ought to be nice big sharp rocks with love written on them. Because he's got love.
Bible scriptures written on them.
Love is written on these paddles, that he sells.
Yeah.
So let's have nice big sharp rocks with love written on them and just use them to hurl at the heads of any non-virgin bride.
Yeah.
But don't do it in anger.
We're not using rice anymore.
It's nuts, right? So we're very happy to hear that you escaped from your nasty nuns.
Barely made it out alive. Well, y'all have a good night.
Well, thanks for calling, and want to ask us anything else, just feel free.
Okay.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Well, cool.
And always welcome down at the bagel shop too.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Like to see new people down there.
Yeah.
So.
But that's the bagel shop meetings are for unbelievers only.
Yes.
Those are not forums for Christians to come and try to convert us.
That's what we're here for today.
That's what the show is for. Atheists and agnostics and unbelievers of all stripes, come see us at the bagel shop. If you'd like to meet other atheists, maybe you wouldn't. After all, we are kind of weird. Well, we're not that weird. So I think Ray is on line 2. Let's talk to him, see what he has. He's been waiting patiently. Hey, you're on the air.
Hey, Martin. I know exactly what you're going through with your mom.
Yeah.
Go through it every Christmas. I mean, she's a devout Catholic, and this last Christmas I went down there, and they had a special on TV where they were showing explained every miracle, and the 10 plagues scientifically. And she watched this, and she still doesn't believe.
Yeah.
And I posed a question to her. I said, okay, you believe that Jesus was God. God knowing, being all-knowing, knowing everything, see all, hear all that kind of bull. I said, God incarnate. I said, don't you think that he would know that they were going to crucify him and that he was going to raise from the dead? So what was the suffering all about? I don't get it. Was it to prove a point?
Yeah.
Evidently it was, yeah.
I mean, what? I don't get it. There was no suffering involved.
No important question. Who is he sacrificing himself to?
Exactly. Exactly.
Himself.
She said, her comment to me was, well, he was fulfilling the scriptures. And I said, Mother, but the scriptures weren't written like 50 years after or 500 years after, something like that.
Yeah.
But even if they were scriptures being fulfilled, right? I mean, this is what amuses me about the whole concept of prophecy, right? It's not just that most prophecies are written so vaguely that people can take them and take a current event and then find some prophecy that's sufficiently vague that you can plug that current event into it, right? But another thing about prophecy is that, let's say you're some fanatical follower of a religion, and your holy book says that on the 3rd day of the 3rd month of the 3rd year and blah, 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 that this event will occur that will herald... Well, if you're a fanatical follower of that religion, who's to say you won't say, boy, I really ought to strap explosives to myself and make that prophecy happen? If you know a prophecy is going to occur, then it's very easy for a fanatic to go ahead and deliberately fulfill it. But, you could take the whole thing about God and his omniscience even further back to Adam and Eve. You know,
she's always trying to, press her religion on me and everything, and I tell her not to, don't do that.
It's very tough.
And I tell her, she told me how great the Catholic faith is and everything, and Catholic religion. I said, well, Mother, then explain the Spanish Inquisition to me. And she doesn't even know what the Spanish Inquisition was about. I'm
really?
Like, my God, if you're going to preach to me, then learn your.
So she doesn't know about her own church's history?
Exactly.
Well, she must know what's going on right now. What's been going on with the priests, right?
Our priest in our parish is gay, and I told her that, and she doesn't believe me.
Oh, well.
The guy told me himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of nice in my family, at least.
Not that there's anything wrong with being gay, but still.
It could hit her in the face, and she still wouldn't believe it.
Well, that's the whole, and you see that not merely in the mainstream religions like Christianity, but you see it with these UFO believers, and you see it with people who believe in all these psychic, I can talk to the dead type guys. You see that attitude of, when someone has decided they want to believe something, I don't think any amount of reasoned arguments is really going to put a dent in that. Yeah. It's going to take, and for example, another one I had, getting back to the UFO believers, Face on Mars. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ever since the first Viking photograph, which showed the hill that had the light was hitting it in such a way that it looked like you could get a face out of that. Okay. Now we have high-resolution digital images of that land feature. Okay. And it's a hill. Doesn't look anything like a face. Very clear. We know what it looks like from all sides. But you can show that. You can show that high-resolution image to one of these Face on Mars believers, and they'll deny it. So, it's one thing for somebody to have a kooky belief, and then when the disconfirming evidence comes along, they'll say, okay, well, gee whiz, I guess I was wrong. I mean, I had to go through that process.
Way to clear all that up, and if NASA would do it, just point the Hubble telescope over there and let us see. Yeah,
but we don't even need to do that. We got the Mars Global Surveyor in orbit taking very strong high-resolution images of the surface. They can get down very, very tight, and, that's what we've got. So, so when you have somebody who you hold the evidence right in front of their face and say, see, I'm sorry, I mean, your belief is wrong, and they still choose to deny it.
Still going to put the blinders on.
Then at that point, I'm afraid you're dealing with just a plain irrational person. And that to me is sad, because when someone has slipped into pure irrationalism, it's very hard to get them back. It takes a lot of work. Yeah. And some people never come back from it.
You know how a rumor starts about a person and then it grows further on down the line?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think these miracles that were done, I think that the further on down the line, they grew and grew and grew till finally it was miracles and, he did this, he did that. And
I still say what happened with the fish and the loaves thing is that they had a big old basket filled with fish and loaves, but it had a towel on the top, one fish, one loaf. The story was he gave those out, lifted off the towel, hey, there's all the rest. 2,000 years later, after 150 different tellings of it, he made more. No, he didn't. He lifted off the freaking blanket.
I'm sure they had magicians back then, too.
Yeah.
True.
Think about it. If you were to go back to the caveman days with Bic lighter, you would be considered a god. They couldn't comprehend how that was done, but it's simple.
Any sufficiently advanced technology. Yeah. Have you heard the Rowan Atkinson skit where it's like he's reading from the Bible, but it's all Jesus he's turned out to be a stage magician? It's like, and yea, the Lord had turned the water unto wine, and verily did the people say unto him, boy, this guy's great. I wonder if he does children's parties.
Yeah. Go on, give us another one.
Give us another one.
Did you guys see the thing on South Park where Santa Claus went to Iraq and
yes, got shot down?
I missed that one. Yeah. Anyway,
play that on your show.
Yeah.
Where Jesus is packing.
Yes, because Jesus then dedicated Christmas. No, Santa dedicated Christmas to Jesus for killing himself to save humanity or something like that. But this is done today. It's I can't remember what it is, but it was kind of wacky.
Oh, boy. Those irreverent South Park guys.
But, all right, you guys be good.
Hey, it was fun hearing from you.
Thanks
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay. John is on line 3. Let's see what he has to say. Hey, you're on the air.
Hey, how y'all doing?
We're doing okay.
Hey.
What's up?
I was at a party, and there was atheists talking, and there was a discussion. Maybe you could clarify it. You guys being gay atheists.
Well, we're not gay, but we have members in our group, so...
Oh, you don't have to hide it or anything, but would you rather eat a...
Go ahead, see what he has to say.
Would you rather eat a fresh, steaming log of shit?
Yeah, that's definitely a release one there.
That's Christian for you. That's
there's that Christian love.
Yeah, there's that Christian love we've been talking about all the show. Yeah. All right. Well, you know, when that's all they've got, our work is done, right? Our work is done. Remember what we said about religion being evil and dangerous? Let's see what Brad has to say. Hey, Brad, you're on the air.
How y'all doing?
We're all right.
Hey, how did you guys become atheists?
Well, it's just a long process of asking questions and you know, thinking about what I was being taught, and it wasn't making sense to me, and I wasn't getting the answers to the questions that I was asking my ministers and pastors and what have you, and so it was a process. It was just a long process of questioning.
Were you asking just your ministers, or were you visiting different churches, you know, talking to different ministers on the aspect?
Well, I suspect that, you know, my minister's probably, you know, as good as any other, you know, and so, I mean, in all of my discussions with Christians and what have you, I mean, I just had specific questions. I wasn't getting the answers to them. They would give me an answer, and I would say, but, you know, I have a problem with that because this, that, or the other, and it was just a long process of, you know, once the seed of doubt was planted and the questions kept coming and kept not being answered.
What about you, Ashley? What about you?
Yeah, I was actually raised Catholic. I went to church every week, stuff like that. I never really did have that much of a belief in it. I always had my doubts, had my questions, stuff like that.
We all do, though. I mean, you know, but you know, I have questions and stuff too, but that doesn't make me want to be an atheist or anything.
Yeah.
You know, or.
But essentially, I mean, I just never had any answers to it. I never saw absolutely anything that pointed to a God. So I just stopped going to church and stopped believing and stopped looking into it. And now later on, I have not gone back to religion, but gone back to the whole philosophy as in there must be something out there. I mean, you know, 80-90% of the world believes in some form of higher power, you know, religion or spirituality, whatever. You know, they can't be wrong. And so,
well, sure they can. I mean, yeah. I mean,
yes, but my opinion was that, you know, not everybody can be wrong. There's got to be something going on we don't know about. And I looked into it as much as I could. I never found absolutely anything with any evidence.
So I mean, you guys don't believe in God or Jesus.
Well, I don't believe in any sort of divine.
God made Jesus anyway.
Any sort of divine supernatural claims, I don't have any belief in them.
There could have been an actual person walking around Jerusalem named Jesus who was, you know, teaching these things and had, you know, some halfway decent ideas on morality and such, possibly, and some half kooky ideas. That's a possibility. But if he was actually, you know, some divine being come down on earth and who, you know, perform miracles, nah.
Yeah. Especially when you realize that the Christian tradition, right, that there were, you know, these divine Messiah figures predating Jesus.
Yeah.
That the Jesus story was taken from, specifically Mithra, right? I mean, Mithra was an active religion in Judea and in that part of the world at the time that Jesus is supposed to have lived. And Mithra is a guy who was a messianic figure who was born of a virgin, you know, in a cave, right? The earliest Christian writings had Jesus in a cave, not in a manger. You know, he performed miracles. He had a dozen disciples. And in the end, he was crucified for his troubles and was resurrected. I mean, this was Mithra. Mithra is said to have been born in 600 BC. And so the Jesus, particularly the legend of Jesus, has very distinct similarities. Yeah. And there are other pre-existing pre-Christian religious traditions where you can pretty much see, you know, Christianity has clearly incorporated ideas from earlier religious traditions. Yeah. So there's nothing really.
Well, I think everybody's really got off of focus on the whole religious thing, because Christian people, they're the ones that killed Jesus anyways. But
well, I mean, wasn't it the Pharisees, the Jewish Pharisees, and the Romans? So, I mean, there really weren't any Christians at the time of Christ except presumably his disciples.
Well, it was his disciples. I mean, to me, I don't believe in. I can't say believe in. I don't go by, you know, Christianity or Catholic or because regardless, there was and there is now still a Christ, and when we all die, we're going to be judged. Ashley's going to be judged for what Ashley did. You're going to be judged for what you did.
Well, I think you need to.
And then when that day comes.
See, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. You need to prove that. Yeah. You need to prove to me.
It's written.
I don't care where. Okay, where's?
I didn't say it. It's the book says it. I didn't say it now.
Well, that's okay. That's fine. So prove to me that what's written in the book.
Wonderland has things written down.
Yeah, prove to me that what's written in the book is true. Show me the evidence that backs up what's written in the book.
Well, and I'm Baptist. If you read from the old version of King James, our minister at one time, he would read out of the Bible, and in the Bible it states everything that's going to happen. And everything has happened, and it's still happening.
Like what?
How can you not believe that? Like
what? Well, we just mentioned to you about how prophecy works. We know how prophecy works. Okay. I mean, if there's mention a specific thing that's happened in the Bible, and that was mentioned in the Bible that's happened in the last year. Okay. I mean, giving if you can show specific examples of that, then I'll start taking it a little more seriously. But usually, generally speaking, what you have with prophecies are nice, vaguely written passages that could apply to pretty much to many situations. It's what's called retrofitting, where you take a contemporary event. And the Nostradamus fans do this all the time. Yeah. You take a contemporary event and you just insert it back into the ancient writings, because the ancient writings are vague enough that you can interpret it that way. And you say, oh, well, clearly, in Daniel, it's prophesied that this event was going to occur.
You can retrofit pretty much anything you want, but if you actually read the Bible saying, well, what's going to happen to the stock market in a year from now, or what's going to happen in China, in 5 years, there's absolutely nothing there.
Yeah.
Once it happens, you can go back and say, wow, that kind of looks like it said it's there. Yeah. But there's absolutely nothing there.
I wish I had a Bible close by, because I think I could be able to prove that. But,
we have one right here.
God bless you, Martin. You too, Ashley, because Martin especially, you really need it, man. I'm not going to judge you, because I'm not supposed to pass judgment on anybody. But like I said, when we all go, then we'll have to answer for what we did. If you believe that or not.
Look, you can say that all you like to me, and you can say God bless you all you want, and that's fine. But if you want me to go ahead and agree with your views, simply provide me with the evidence. That's all it'll take. I'm perfectly open to any evidence you care to show.
And your book doesn't say anything about us being judged on how we live our life, because I'm not perfect. I'll grant you that.
Right.
But I'm hardly out there, killing people or anything. I'm doing fairly well.
Yeah, but
he's not judging me on what I'm doing. He's judging me on the litmus test of did I get on my knees and bow down to him. If I didn't, then you're going to burn for all eternity.
I mean, that's John 3.
That's not. I don't know who told y'all that though.
John 3:18 tells me that. John 3:36. John 3:36 tells you that too.
Isn't that the New Testament? What are you reading from the New Testament for?
Oh, so wait a minute.
It's been written. The Bible's been.
Wait a minute. Wait, are you rejecting the New Testament?
7 or 8 different times.
Wait, are you rejecting the New Testament? You're saying, what are we reading from the New Testament for?
There's a lot of man-made stuff that's been put in the New Testament.
But the only references to Jesus are the ones in the New Testament. So if you're rejecting the New Testament, you're rejecting the scriptures that Christians say you have to believe in to be Christian.
I don't read from the New Testament. Okay.
Well, then I think a lot of your
Old Testament of King James.
I think a lot of your fellow Christians would tell you that you're not Christian.
Well, I mean,
if you're saying that if you're rejecting the New Testament, okay, everything that I was taught, right? When I went to church, and I went to church for probably right up into my early teens, I was taught that the requirements to be a Christian is that you have to believe that Jesus came, that He died for your sins, that He was resurrected on the third day, that Jesus was He was the divine Son of God. These are the requirements. That's the list of things.
You're not a Christian.
That's the things that you have to believe in order to be Christian. So if you're saying that you don't believe those things that are written in the New Testament, I think a lot of your fellow Christians would tell you you're not Christian.
I didn't read from the New Testament.
Well, the Old Testament is also filled with a lot of filth.
From the New Testament.
Well, the Old Testament is also filled with a lot of filth too. So.
Well, I mean, the point is, like, New Testament, Old Testament, whatever. Yeah. Go ahead, show me whatever evidence you've got for your God, and I'll look at it. Okay? I mean. That's as simple as that.
Physical evidence.
It's as simple as that, you know.
I think that's why we have a lot of serial killers and child molesters and stuff. People
you mean like all those
that probably are non-believers? That's how it all started.
Well, what about all those Catholic priests who believe in God who molested children? What about those two youth ministers in the church in South Austin who beat an 11?
What color were they?
Oh, so now you're a racist.
They were white, weren't they?
Oh, so now you're a racist.
They were white. White people do silly shit like that.
So now you're a racist. All right, I think you're an idiot, and it's time to hang up on you. Bye. What a fool. Okay. See, this is...
Wow.
Boy, religion just brings everyone together under a blanket of love, doesn't it? I tell you. You know?
If you're not exactly like me, then you're not a true Christian.
We start every show. We start every show reminding people how, insisting that religion is a very dangerous and bad belief system that is harmful, and then our callers just prove our point. It's just sort of like, thanks for doing our work for us. Line 2, Joe. All right. See what Joe has to say. Hey, you're on the air.
Hey, how you doing, gentlemen?
We're good.
Hey, I'm a doctor of forensic anthropology.
Okay.
And I'm a full-blooded Chiricahua Apache. I was raised on an Indian reservation in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And when I was growing up in the 50s, I saw a lot of stuff there that was provided by the Christians to my people, and including a couple of murders that were done at the hands of some priests and some nuns. And my father was one of the people who told these guys, well, I'm not going to take your way. And so they proceeded to burn down our home and told them, we'll be back in 2 weeks. If you're not ready to accept the Catholic religion, then, we'll go burn down something else. And so we left when I was like 11 years old from the reservation.
Wow. So this is happening recently even?
Yeah, it was in the 50s.
Wow.
Late 50s.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear that you had to go through that.
But I got to tell you, as a result of what I saw when I was a child, I decided that's the reason I went into anthropology, to try to get to the bottom of all this stuff. And I've been pretty much all over the world and studied lots of old relics. And the real truth is that you cannot enlighten these people, like the man who was just on the phone. When they get, even the best of them, they get violent when they're confronted with the truth, and they won't accept it. And it's like you were saying, if for some reason or another they're all love and happiness, and as soon as you state that your mindset is a little different than theirs, doesn't even have to be opposite, just a little different, then all of a sudden you're not coming to heaven. And the real truth is, for anyone who wants to know the real truth, is that everything that's written in those books, everything is man-made, all of it. I guess, in some people's eyes, you might say lucky enough, but I was in the Vatican back in the 70s, and I had a priest there who showed me some of the original, what they call the original scriptures that were actually written on the old leather and stuff. And I said, well, where's the book? He said, it's right there. And I said, really? He said, yeah, it was less than 30 pages. Now, I don't know how they turned 30 pages. Got this. Right. I don't know how they turned 30 pages into a couple thousand, but
it was small type.
Very teeny tiny.
The basic truth is, man, is that Jesus and all those other people, they were just like the medicine men who were on my reservation. They were just healers. And their message was love and peace, and that was it. And these guys have been killing folks all over the world in the name of Christianity since the dawn of time.
Because Christianity as an institution is like other institutions. It's about wielding power and control.
And money.
I mean, that's money, right? That's all part of it. Again, at the beginning of the show, we were talking about the Christian opposition to life extension technologies. And this is because they see these scientific advances as threats to their control.
Absolutely.
This is why they oppose the teaching of evolution. This is why they oppose any sort of any kind of criticism.
Well, anything that's enlightening, that's not along their lines of thinking.
Yeah, and that doesn't redound to the glory of their faith.
Right.
Anything that doesn't help to the cause of supporting their faith and their belief system.
Well, and if the real truth is were to be known, all the different avenues of the Christian religion were really and truly empowered for one basic reason, that's control of the masses, and mainly control of the female. Yeah. And and people to this day, I even had women. I spoke at a university a few months ago in Colorado. I even had women, modern day women, become hostile with me because they were like, "Well, my husband is the embodiment of Jesus, and I'm told to do what he tells me to do 24/7." And so I'm like, "Lady,
where's your self-respect?"
and they were okay with that life?
They were. I mean, see, the thing is that that's what I've been trying to tell folks since I was, a young man, is that this whole deal, this whole mindset that these people have been taught, it's a brainwashing, and it starts at birth. So you get someone who's 30, 40, 50 years old, and they've been brainwashed since the minute they can understand what you're saying. They're not gonna accept it. I mean, a person has to be willing.
Yeah, you can't. It's very difficult to undo a lifetime of indoctrination. Right. There was an interesting article. I didn't agree with all points it made, but there's a transhumanist website called BetterHumans.org.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay, well, there's an article recently on there talking about ending biblical brainwash, and he starts by saying, "Look, imagine you're a psychologist, and someone comes to you and tells you that they have this invisible friend who created the universe, and you talk to him all the time, and you pray to him, and he grants you favors." And not only that, but he's constantly trying to thrust this book into your hands, trying to get you to believe in his invisible friend too, and telling you that your life is going astray if you don't, and all of these different things. Could you, in any sort of sense of professional honesty, classify this person as psychologically healthy? Of course, he makes the point. Well, no, you can't. So maybe it's time to look at religious fundamentalism as a genuine psychological disorder.
Yeah.
Now, he went over the top with. He overplayed his hand on a couple of points in the article. I think at one point he said, maybe we can, if the government can compel, real psychos and schizophrenics to take treatment, maybe we can compel. And it's like, no, come on. We don't want to get into that kind of Orwellian business. But in the end, in the article, I think he comes back to, being rational at the end of it and says that obviously the best way to combat this is education, and to improve the quality of education.
Yeah, but just like the guy that you were talking to a while ago. Yeah. I mean, you can show. I mean, you guys. I mean, you're right there on television. I mean, you could hang up the entire history of it on the back wall behind you, and you're still going to have these people calling and telling you that you're wrong, and that they wish they had the Bible in their hands so they could prove you wrong. And what I was thinking is maybe I could become the next Christ of some sort. So I'll just write myself a book.
It worked for L. Ron Hubbard.
That's what I'm telling you. All you do is you write a book about how great you are and all these things you can do, and you have 5 or 6 of your best friends sign it on the bottom. You bury it in the sand, and in 900 years, in 900 years, you were the guy who came and saved the world. And that's basically all it is, But these people, they won't,
Well, a lot of these cultists, that's what they do. That's what
the Christians are big, and they can't wait to accuse somebody of brainwashing. It's like, these guys, all they do is they get these poor kids off the streets and they brainwash them, and then they got them selling things for them, blah, blah, blah. Well, they have been doing the same thing since the dawn of time, since their inception of their thoughts.
And there are actually two different things. Once, we hear it a lot on this show, too. The original argument that they usually first come in with is, well, not argument, but point, I guess, is that, God loves you, and it's all good, it's all healthy, it's all fun, it's all loving. But then at the end of the call, after they're not winning anything, essentially, it turns out, well, you're going to burn in hell otherwise.
Right.
So start with the nice stuff. If that doesn't work, condemn them to hell.
Exactly.
We're white guys. We don't know what we don't.
We don't know what we're talking about.
We're white people.
Believe me, I get the same thing all the time. It's like, ever since Dances with Wolves, it's like, well, you're the medicine man. I don't know, Jack.
Now, tell me something, just really quickly, though. You've got a couple more callers lined up, but I just want you to touch on it, because I think it's fascinating. Now, explain to me forensic anthropology and how that differs from, like, other avenues of anthropology. What is it exactly you do as a forensic anthropologist?
There are probably 20 different types of anthropology.
Yeah.
And those are the main ones. What a person who's trained like me does, you have a choice. You can either work for one of the people that I refuse to work for, which is a government agency, animating skulls and.
You take the skulls and you put the flesh on it. Sculpt.
Or you can go out and dig up dinosaur bones and try to figure out what kind of food they ate last. Or you can do like I did, and when I first started doing this, was to research my people and pretty much where they came from, how they started, and what their belief systems were, and try to figure out how they ended up getting pressured into Christianity. That's basically what I did. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that you can do with that, my particular field, but it's basically the study of the origins of existence.
Yeah, and culture, civilization too, as well.
Yeah, but that's a different part.
I've heard that if there's one thing that will help wipe religious memes out of your brain, it's education and maybe even a little field work in anthropology.
Absolutely.
I've heard that once you see how the rest of the world outside of so many religious people lead an insulated life.
Right. Well, the thing, and as I said, something like this helps you to see reality and truth.
Yeah.
And these people, you'll realize if you ever do go out on an anthropology dig or to a class, less than 5% of them are believers in any kind of system.
That's interesting.
Because you just can't be.
Yeah,
I mean, you're looking at the truth 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I know. When you're just seeing how things are outside the shell, right?
Right.
Like we were talking about on, I think when Jeff was host on a TV show, we were talking about how, you notice how the Christian community is now just this community where Christians now there's Christian TV shows and TV networks, and there's Christian rock music, and there are Christian bookstores, and there are Christian coffee houses, and there are all these Christian businesses. And by establishing their own little subculture, right, this serves to isolate them from critical points of view. This is why it's so shocking to so many of our viewers to even see us on the air, right? There's a realize that, well, I kind of heard that atheists existed, in a cave in Idaho somewhere, but I didn't think that they were really,
I lived in Los Angeles for almost 20 years, and there's plenty of shows like this out there.
Wow, well, that's good. Cool.
And then the thing is, the truth is that most people, are smarter than that nowadays. It's just that you have these people that are fanatical that just won't give up.
Yeah, and they're scarifyingly well financed too.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And I hate to say it, but it's the truth, and that's just what's going on in the government right now, and in the Middle East right now, and most of those people out there, like all the Muslims and people on that, even those folks are starting to realize that, hey, maybe this is a bunch of baloney. And and
hope springs eternal.
Yeah, the thing is that they if they're willing to kill each other for it, why not kill each other for the truth?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I think if you have the truth, you would have far too much sense. People would have more sense than to kill each other.
Right.
But anyway, it's great hearing from you, and a lot of interesting information. Feel free to please call the show back anytime. All right. If you have more information
no problem. Have a good day, guys.
Yeah, you take care.
Bye.
It's also important to note. You were saying that you can't change the minds of people who are, so indoctrinated into it. It's a good point, but that's not. Partly just point out that's not what this show is for. One, we're not here to convert anybody, but two, we're not expecting even to really make a dent in many of those people's ideas. It's for the other viewers. It's for everybody else who's watching and hearing about it.
Some people will make the choice, right? I mean, some people will allow themselves.
Yes.
Will allow this, like Melissa, but there are other people who are just, they're unsinkable rubber ducks in terms of, how they deal with their belief.
Yeah.
I understand that. I mean, I know that is, although you're right when you say we don't really expect to deconvert people from their belief system, we at least want folks to be able to kind of to understand what the criticisms are of their faith and to be able to engage in some sort of dialogue with us. Yeah. And most of our callers can do that. Yeah. Some of them can't. Yeah. But, that just proves our point that the religious memes, I think, are damaging to people, to their mental health and to the way you're able to understand how reality works and interact with others. Yeah. But anyway, we got a few more minutes, so we're going to talk to Larry on 3. Hey, you're on the air.
Hey, Martin. Hi, Ashley. How you doing?
Just fine.
I talked to Martin in person actually about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I had mentioned to him about a show that was on Comedy Central by Dennis Leary.
Okay. Oh yeah. All right.
And
I remember now. Yeah.
It's called Contest Searchlight.
Okay.
And you can just go to the Comedy Central website under TV shows, and it gives you a listing of each one of the episodes and what happened in them.
Okay, that'll be fun.
But I recently was laid off my job about 2 months ago. And a friend of mine, of course, asked me if I wanted to go to church because first sign of a desperate person is prayer. So I've been going every Sunday to a Catholic church. I was raised Catholic.
Really?
And I was actually kind of surprised at how things had changed. Some of the genuflecting and all that I don't remember. Mind you, there have been about 10 years between the last time I went to church and going back now. And it just amazed me. The thing that I had a problem with is that I was constantly told that if I don't do this or I don't do that, I'm going to hell.
That's just a stickler, isn't it? I mean, that just keeps coming up, doesn't it?
I'm coming to be, cheered up or whatever, and they're going to hell. And then they turn around and ask me for money.
That comes up too, doesn't it?
So
all these sticky points. Yeah.
And I think that's what my main problem is that over those years I've watched a lot of television and I've seen the Benny Hinn's and the TBN network and I mean the religion that's on TV and they're constantly begging for money and they're saying, okay, if you send us $100, we'll get your prayer in faster.
Yeah.
And you suck, you're worthless, you can't do anything right, but could we have your money anyway?
Exactly.
Yeah. Like God, being omniscient, wouldn't know that you were going to pray, wouldn't already know what your prayer was going to be for, and wouldn't already have made up his mind whether or not he was going to answer and fulfill that prayer. Well, which makes the whole act of prayer pointless.
Oh, right. Well, the thing is that they're also asking for my money so they can build this huge monumental building to God that I'm never going to be in.
Yeah. God can't build his own monumental buildings.
It's just one of it's the worst part about the whole thing is that they've made it a major business.
Well, that's all it's ever been, right? I mean, that's the priesthood. Remember, back in early civilizations, pre-technological societies, the priesthood was also the government. They were the people in power. They were the only people who were literate. So they controlled the economies of, like if you go back to Mesopotamia and before, that's, and so that meme has started even way back then.
Right.
It's the same thing today. Religion is a business designed to perpetuate itself and to enrich itself, just like any other business. They're just more ruthless about it.
Well, I've also noticed that they've gotten to the point where, they're not shy about picking on the other religions in their homilies either.
No.
And it struck me kind of odd that it's become, like a, pissing contest as to who has a better religion.
Yeah. My God can beat up your God.
Right. And, I honestly, you had mentioned talking to an invisible guy, and I did that a lot. I mean, I still do it. I still, when I'm laying in bed, I'll talk out loud or, and it makes me feel better, And if something happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
But do you realize that you're basically just talking and to make yourself feel better?
I do. And that's the thing is, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Okay.
But, with that Catholic upbringing, I got it in the back of my mind. Well, at least I can think he's listening to me if he exists,
Yeah.
Well, but so, I mean, it doesn't make me feel odd. Now, the thing was is that when I went back to the church, they told me that it's better to pray in a church with the community than by yourself.
Wow, that contradicts what the Bible says.
Yeah, and that kind of bugged me like to no end.
Yeah,
Wow.
that completely contradicts Scripture.
Yeah.
Where it says you go into your closet.
Yeah, go into your closet and hide away and pray there.
Pray in private. Yeah.
So I mean, it struck me kind of odd.
But they hope that people won't know that, right? Because they want people to come to their churches and give them money.
Exactly.
And enrich their business. It's a business. I think religion, when you cut through all of the, scratch the surface of it, tear through the facade, you're looking at a business that exists to get people into the pews to cough up their money. Yeah. I mean, tear everything else away. That's all religion is for.
Right.
I mean, at least that's what it's set up for.
The God who created the universe apparently can't scrape together enough money on his own to redo the paint job.
Why would an all-powerful being need cash? Anyway, now listen, we appreciate hearing from you, and that's the end of our show today. Juan and David, who have been holding on the line, we apologize that we're not going to be able to get to your calls today on today's show, but please call us back next Sunday because we will be here. And, we never manage the phone lines light up so much that we never manage to get to all of them. But we thank all of our callers. Yes. And we'll see you next Sunday on the 5th. Remember, reruns on Tuesday and lecture series next Sunday at First Cafeteria. Theists, we don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.
Everybody have a good New Year's Eve party.
Yes, have a very safe New Year's.
The end of 2010.